The challenge with doing a show like this is that everybody who watches a show like this already knows what is and isn't for the most part. Now, we get things wrong, that's true. But you, dear viewer, are an interested person who has listened to enough news to be able to surmise and often correctly see the patterns in what's happening. And I say this because this story probably will leave you going, yeah, Tim, we get it. And that is, pro-Palestinian protesters are backed by a surprising source, Biden's biggest donors, says Politico. Unfortunately for you and for I, no one is surprised here. The Politico readers are like, oh, egad. Democrat donors are funding communist protests? My word, how could this be happening? Well, listening to Fox News, there was an interesting point made. I can't remember who made it. They said, why are the protests still happening? Why is it being funded? Why is it happening? Because it's working. Fair point. Joe Biden just suspended military aid to Israel. They have just temporarily suspended the construction of the pier that was going to beach in Gaza, and it's now moving to Ashdod. So it sounds like Joe Biden is panicked over this widespread protest, and he's giving in. Well, here's the news from Politico, and then we do have more information. Big breaking news. Columbia's canceled its graduation ceremony. Look at this. Columbia cancels university-wide commencement. I'm sorry, not graduation, commencement after weeks of protests on campus. And we have the polling data coming out. Biden's trailing among minority voters and young voters. This is his panicked moment. He can't lose a single voter. But unfortunately, welcome to the rock and the hard place, Joe Biden, because older people support Israel. Whether that's good or bad is irrelevant. I don't see Biden winning. I think Trump's going to win. You know, I'm somewhat reluctant to give a prediction outright because in 2020, you know, I was looking at all the economic factors and all the data and everything in the mainstream press was suggesting a Trump victory. Recently got back from Mar-a-Lago. Had me a mite conversation with the people that were there. Nothing privy, just the people who were there and what they thought. And I've come to the conclusion that Trump's going to win. I don't know what the probability is. Maybe I'm aiming at like a 73% probability that Trump wins. But it's not so much, and I'll stress this again, I talked to no one about any secret information or anything like that. I'm not talking to any insiders. I'm saying just literally Trump supporters as I'm down there. And I'm like, what do you think's going to happen? I'm like, well, we don't really know. Like I said, I wasn't even at the fundraiser in the morning. I was at the beach hanging out with just some people. But I really do think that Trump he's working the deals behind the scenes. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but I think he's going to win. Politico says, President Joe Biden has been dogged for months by pro-Palestinian protesters calling him Genocide Joe. Wow. But some of the groups behind the demonstrations received financial backing from philanthropists pushing hard for his re-election. The donors include some of the biggest names in Democratic circles, Soros, Rockefeller, and Pritzker. Two of the organizers supporting the protests at Columbia University and on other campuses are Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. Both are supported by the Tides Foundation, which is seeded by Democratic megadonor George Soros and was previously supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It in turn supports numerous small nonprofits that work for social change. Soros declined to comment. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has previously funded the Tides Foundation and other groups, said it no longer has active grants to Tides. It also does not support Jewish Voice for Peace or If Not Now. Another notable Democratic donor whose philanthropy has helped fund the protest movement is David Rockefeller Jr., who sits on the board of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. In 2022, the fund gave $300,000 to the Tides Foundation, according to nonprofit tax forms. Tides has given nearly $500,000 over the past 5 years to Jewish Voice for Peace, which explicitly describes itself as anti-Zionist. Several other groups involved in pro-Palestinian protests are backed by a foundation funded by Susan and Nick Pritzker, heir to the Hyatt Hotel empire, and supporters of Biden and numerous Democratic campaigns, including $6,600 to the Biden Victory Fund a few months ago and more than $300,000 during the 2020 campaign. The trail of donation shows a series of blurred lines when it comes to liberal causes in Democratic politics. Often those missions are aligned, but they also sometimes have different and particularly when it comes to Gaza, conflicting agendas and tactics. And a small group of wealthy heavyweights are often playing an outsized role in funding many of them. You know, I'm going to bring this up again. We've brought it up several times. over the past few weeks. But considering this news, I did not have it pulled up. I'm going to show you right here. Democrats overwhelmingly disapprove of the military action in Gaza by Israel. Surprise, surprise. Joe Biden says, do not move on Rafah, and we are cutting you off from your ammunition because the Democrat donor said so. Let's talk about the glorious rock and hard place. Democratic members of Congress moving to ban TikTok. It's hyperbolic. It's not really a ban, but basically, let's just say functionally ban. These are the moves they're making, TikTok, because TikTok allows anti-Israel content. But at the same time, as Democrats overwhelmingly criticize Israel, Biden gets on his knee to these donors and says, so be it. I'm loving it. I'm having a good time. You think I care that we're suspending ammo transfers to Israel? I will point at the hypocrisy of Trump suspends military aid to Ukraine. They impeach him and call it illegal. That was it. Outside of the whole calling Zelensky or was it Poroshenko? I think it was Zelensky, wasn't it? No, I think it was Poroshenko. It's fact check me on that one. Trump calls the president of Ukraine, says, what's up with this Biden video? They say, aha! But they claimed in all these news reports it was the suspending of aid. That was the impeachable offense and illegal. Biden's doing it now to please his donors. Here we go, baby. This pro-Palestinian protest stuff, it's not going to be able to Joe Biden's not going to be able to withstand these protests. He's going to be bleeding supporters. I don't know if this is true. I know Michael Rappaport's been talking about voting for Trump being on the table. But someone told me that Rappaport said he was going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, maybe. There's like a video apparently. I don't follow him enough apparently. Why is the Rockefeller Fund giving significant grants to Jewish Voice for Peace, which blamed the October 7th attacks on Israel and the United States rather than Hamas? Said Elisha Weisel, a Democratic donor who chairs the Elie Wiesel Foundation, an organization that supports anti-genocide work. Jewish Voice for Peace, which did not return a request for comment, has been a leader in disruptive protests against Biden, including shouting genocide supporter at a glitzy fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall. The complex funding system in the nonprofit space sometimes mean that groups are funded by grants or even sub-grants. So let's put it this way. We'll skip over. We get it. Democrat donors hate Israel. Fine. I'll tell you what I think is happening. I think that they've been subverted. Democrats, of course, are uniparty. They love Israel. But what happens? Well, when TikTok becomes prevalent and dominant, the young people working these organizations hate Israel. The older people funding it weren't paying attention. Bill Ackman, great example. A wealthy man, defending universities, notably on the liberal side of things, until the Israel stuff happens. And then he realizes, perhaps he's been funding all of this. Many of these Democrat donors may not have realized what they were doing. And I said this last week. Many of us have been screeching like banshees to the high heavens. The woke stuff hates Israel. And it will, and Jews, and it will come back to haunt you. And I draw that distinction. Notably with the Women's March, that story from Tablet Mag that was shocking to so many liberals, that the women who organized it actually were deeply anti-Semitic. And I'm not talking about Israel. These are people who are pushing conspiracy theories about Jews as a whole. And me and many other anti-social, like anti-SJW, what do you want to call it? The critical of the woke. Let's call it woke. It's easy to understand. We're saying, like, guys, you do realize these people are racist and anti-Semitic, and they believe insane things like similar to the Nazis' beliefs. You had the late David Graeber saying that certain factions of the left have adopted the fascistic tenets of there is no truth but power, and they did not listen. Well, surprise, surprise, y'all funded this, and now you will reap what you have sown. Here we go. From the New York Post. Hims and Hers CEO walks back praise for anti-Israel protesters after stock drops. Oh, mercy me. Good sir, what is this? The CEO of buzzy healthcare company Hims and Hers walked back his praise for anti-Israel student protesters after his firm's stock value plunged nearly $210 million in a single day after declaring he had other execs were eager to hire them. That's right. Andrew Dudum took to Twitter on Sunday to clarify his prior comments. The last few days I have been a disheartening reflection of just how divisive a time we live in. I'd like to clarify a few things because my words have been misconstrued by some. I in no way condone nor support acts of threats or violence, anti-Semitism or intimidation, and there is absolutely no justification for violence on our campuses. Every student deserves to feel safe without fear of harm, etc., etc., etc. His apparent about-face came after the online sexual health and pharmaceutical company saw its stock plummet 8% from an opening price of $12.24 to $11.26. The market cap of the company opened at $2.62 billion, closed at $2.41 billion. After the initial drop, the share price at Hims and Hers continued to slide in the after-hours trading. The decline came after Dudum had declared that companies would be happy to employ the disciplined protesters and encouraged them to apply at Hims and Hers. Moral courage greater than a college degree. Oh, let me tell you how this breaks down. First of all, he basically was like, everything you're doing is great. We'll hire you. I'm being hyperbolic, of course. He wasn't saying literally everything they do, but he was praising the protesters. The protesters stand arm in arm with people chanting things like death to Zionists. There is a video going around, which is basically the black and blue, gold and white dress phenomenon of, did they yell Zionists or Jews? And everyone's arguing about what they really yelled. Some are saying they said the Arabic word for Zionists. Some are saying they said something like Yahadim. I'm probably getting it wrong. This is not my area of expertise, meaning Jew. And I don't know. But let's just say they meant Zionist. Let's just say at the bare minimum, they really were chanting death to Zionists, okay? They're calling for the death of people. Okay, and this guy is like, that's peaceful. They're just bullhorning. My guy, this is why your stock price goes down. But I'll tell you the real reason, the bulk reason. Moral courage is greater than a college degree. Well, college degrees aren't particularly valuable in my opinion. They at least represent some kind of work you did. Moral courage? So a guy comes into my store and we make coffee. And I say, we need a barista who's going to make a cappuccino, a latte, a mocha, a chai tea latte, a macchiato, you name it. We got all these drinks. We got Americanos. We got decaf. We got cold brew. What's your qualifications? And one guy goes, I have a college degree in coffee making. And I say, okay. The next guy comes in and says, I have no degree, but I worked as a barista for 4 years, the same amount of time that person was in college. Okay, well, it's kind of obvious there who I'm going to hire, right? But wait, according to this Dudum guy, the next person walks in and goes, I've not done anything with coffee, but I don't like Israel. My guy, if you're going to hire that person, don't be surprised when people sell your stock. They're like, dude, putting somebody in a position who has no experience but has moral courage means you're going to hire a guy who can't make a cup of coffee to make a cup of coffee because he screamed about Israel. That's insane. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure what he's actually saying is they still expect some experience, but I got to be honest. If someone came in and said, went to college for coffee making, the next guy says, worked at Starbucks for 4 years. The next guy says, I worked at Starbucks for a couple of years and I protest Israel. I'd be like, I have no idea what that has to do with anything in coffee. And quite honestly, it's weird. So I'm going to go with the guy who knows how to make coffee. I absolutely love this timeline. Well, you reap what you have sown, good sir. Here are the people that you supported. Portland State activist at Gaza camp threatens to burn more police cars, saying that 15 cars got torched and they can do it again. MFer. Okay, well, in the end, I think what we're seeing is fairly obvious. Biden is worried. CNN says, Biden's young voter problem keeps getting worse. Does it really now? Is this why Biden is bending the knee to these protesters? Probably. Unrest on college campuses is driven in part by an opposition to an unpopular Democratic president's support for Israel. Add in the fact that Democrats are holding their national convention in Chicago this year. It's not hard to hear echoes of 1968. Trump leads Biden among young people. Young voters are part of Democrats' natural base of support, but Biden is actually 11 points behind Trump among young voters, 18 to 34, in a head-to-head matchup in a CNN poll conducted by SSRS and released over the weekend. Among all Americans, about half, 47% of registered voters in CNN's poll, said they were satisfied with the candidates they have to choose from for president this year. That figure was dragged down by the fact that just 37% of younger voters said they were satisfied. Younger voters don't like their choices in 2024. Take a look at this. Are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the candidates you have to choose from for president in this year's election? 18 to 34-year-olds, 62% are dissatisfied. 65 plus, 57, they're actually very satisfied. Let me tell you, my friends, let me tell you a story of a man named Donald J. Trump. So yesterday morning, we spent the weekend at Mar-a-Lago, and it was it's fun. It's not that big. It's a big place. I mean, for a residential private club, it's a big place, but it's not really that big. You know, it's weird that it was once someone's house, I guess. I don't know how you'd live in something like that. But there's a road that cuts in half, but there's a tunnel that connects them both. And so, you know, Saturday morning, we're hanging out at the beach, you know, Allison and I, and we're swimming and just chilling. We were watching Cody Dennison race, ARCA Racing, on Fox Sports 1, rooting for the Timcast car. He did decently well, despite some issues, but, you know, we're cool. We're having a good time, and we look forward to seeing the next race. And they had that big fundraiser going on. So that evening, when we had dinner scheduled, I didn't know there was a second fundraiser. Trump was going to be speaking for Ronnie Jackson, I believe his name was. And so we went out and actually picked up a suit. And you can see it on Instagram. I actually have some nice clothes. And I buttoned the bottom button. Everyone's mad at me for it. Whatever. And set the trend, huh? Don't care. But so the next day, we were going to grab lunch with Bill Pulte. And we were in the patio at Mar-a-Lago. And sure enough, Trump was there. He's walking out. He looks very tired. He was heading to the F1. And there was a guy sitting down on the bench next to me. And as the president walks by, you know, I just give a wave. The guy next to me says, "Mr. President, can I get a photo?" And Trump stops and looks at him and goes, "Do you have to?" "Oh, come on. I'm so late. Let's get it." And I was just like, this guy, he looks so tired. He's running late. Somebody asks him for a photo. Trump takes the time out to get that guy the photo. He says, "Come on, let's go get that photo." And he actually took the time out to talk with Bill Pulte, as well as, you know, Trump's a good guy. He's a funny guy. His speech at Mar-a-Lago that we saw, it's comedy. It's stand-up. It's ad-lib, off the cuff. It's funny stuff. And I'm thinking, you know, here's this guy. Is busy, and anyone could be surrounded by Secret Service, and some guy at his club just says, "I'd love to get a photo with you." And Trump says, "Come on." You know why? Because Trump knows for this guy, maybe one of the only times in his life he'll ever get to get a picture with Donald Trump. Trump knows that. I talked to the employees at Mar-a-Lago. They love him. I talked to the employees in 2015 at Trump Tower when Trump was running. The first thing I go down to the employees who work there, and I asked them, "What do you think of Trump?" And they're like, "We love him." Why? Trump notoriously, at his properties, comes down, calls up the employees and hands out $100 bills to all of them. He just, "Here's $100. Thank you for what you're doing." Everybody loves it. You work at a Trump property, I'm like, the joke is when they're hiring you, they're like, now it does pay $20 an hour, but when Trump shows up, he will hand you a $100 bill. So it's just like Trump takes care of his employees. The reason I bring this up is that the media portrayal of Donald Trump versus who everyone sees him as when he's walking around, when he's at a club, when he meets you, it's night and day. Night and day. If you read about Trump, it's this crazy guy who hates everybody. When you see him in person, he stops, he tells you how handsome you are, he shakes your hand, pats you on the back and says, "Keep up the good work." And then he hands his employee a $100 bill. It's remarkable. Go to Mar-a-Lago. And I'm talking to the people who work there. And they said, many of us have worked here long before Trump, they get paid well. And they're like, "We've worked here long before Trump was running. And he's been the nicest guy ever. They absolutely adore him." And I'm like, isn't it fascinating? You know what I saw when I saw Trump take this picture with this guy, when he took time out of his day? I was like, Trump seems like the kind of guy who's just doing it for you. He's an important guy. Everybody wants to be around him. And I thought to myself, why is it that so many people want to run up to Trump and they want to say, "Mr. President, Mr. President"? And the way I see Trump respond to people is that it seems like Trump is a guy who's got great influence and charisma who's going to help you out. That's how it felt in person. And I'm not saying that's true for little everybody. There's conflicting interests all over the world. But when you meet him in person, that's kind of the vibe you get. That Trump's the kind of guy who, not literally, but he's going to help you change a tire, push your car. He's going to help you move. And again, not literally. Trump's the kind of guy who's going to be like, he's going to look over at one of his dudes and says, "Hey, go help him take care of that thing." But in terms of stopping, take time out of his day when he's late because somebody wanted a photo with him, I felt like this guy's doing this for him. Because Trump knows for all these people who love and adore him or who respect him and want to see him win, someone says, "I want a photo." It's their one chance probably in their life to ever get a photo with the president. And so Trump took his time out to do that. Trump's not a perfect guy. He's, he's like many other people. But there's a reason why people love him and love his name. And take a look at this. The reason why I bring this up. Are you satisfied or dissatisfied? I think if more 18 to 34-year-olds went to a Trump rally, and this is why his rallies are so effective, their attitude would change. I saw Trump's rallies, numerous, in 2015 and 16. And I knew exactly what was going on. And I saw it. I talked to people. Trump's hilarious. He's personable. After his rally, he's late. And they're like, like before he was president, they were like, Mr. Trump, we need to go. And he'd be like, hold on. He walks down to the barricades and he's shaking people's hands. You know what the craziest thing is that Trump, security must be an issue for this man who's president, former president. But he takes the time to walk up to people standing at the barricade and shaking all their hands, asking them who they are, what do they do, what he can do for them, signing hats. This guy gets it. Joe Biden walks away, stops for no one. He doesn't even show up half the time. This is the distinction. Trump is doing things for you. Biden is doing things for the deep state. That's why they wanted to destroy Donald Trump. That's why they supported Biden. But here we are right now, bringing it all full circle. I think Trump's going to win. And I'll tell you why. I think Trump already won. Winning the election is different from winning culturally. I think Trump made concessions in his first term. I think he will make concessions again. But I think now what's happening with these protests, with these donors, many of these donors are saying, no, we're not donating anymore. We're realizing what they've been funding. Joe Biden now suspending aid to Israel is creating a lot of problems for the military-industrial complex for the deep state. Mike Johnson's overwhelming support for Israel and funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, and Donald Trump working alongside him. The people that Trump had at his fundraiser, some have suggested may be the auditions for VP. That was on, I think it was Benny Johnson said is Trump's VP pick on the stage, and then Trump retruthed it or something. So that's the rumor that's going around. I'll tell you what I think. I think Donald Trump goes to a uniparty establishment figures and says, look, we don't want this country to fall apart. This cannot continue. The Trump base will never back down. And the Democrats are now opposing Israel. Trump says he's the most pro-Israel candidate there is and ever will be. And so now the deep state has a choice. Concede to Donald Trump and take what you can get, or stand behind the collapse. I think that a negotiation, this is all speculative. I think you got deep state uniparty guys. They go to Trump and they say, Trump, here's what you absolutely cannot do. And Trump says, fine. I get to do these things, though. These are things that we must accomplish. These are things we must do for the American people. We must secure our border. We must have peace arrangements, blah, blah, blah. And then I will give you Ukraine. I will give you Israel. Because now with Joe Biden, what happens is Trump's off the hook. I mean, on the surface level, Trump gets into the office and says, I did not start this conflict. It was Joe Biden, and I will work to end it. I said this a year ago, that if Trump gets elected, he ends the war in Ukraine overnight. I'm not so convinced now because I think Trump may have cut a deal. And I'm not blaming him for it. No, I still think Trump is the right choice. I think that likely what we get is you're going to see a certain degree of capitulation from Trump on foreign policy. You're going to see him choose a candidate that people are going to groan over because this is the compromise. Trump wins in certain areas that we want to win on, probably cultural issues, domestic issues, and the deep state wins on foreign policy issues, at least to a certain degree. Speculation. I don't know for sure. But based on what I'm hearing, what I'm watching with Joe Biden and all this, I think the deep state has no choice but to hand it over to Donald Trump. We'll see, my friends. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.